The emergency lights flickered above us, casting everyone in a shimmering orange glow as the power grid groaned. The entire floor reeked of hot plastic and ozone. Alarms buzzed, low, urgent, mechanical warnings meant to evacuate the building immediately. Yet my CEO Lawrence Porch stood in front of the glass exit doors, hand out to block us like we were children attempting escape. "No one leaves," he said flatly. "Power outage doesn't excuse deadlines. You stay. And you're staying unpaid." Someone whispered behind me, "This isn't safe." Lawrence turned sharply, his eyes narrowing. "Anyone who walks out can collect their things tomorrow." I swallowed hard as the room spun with heat and fear. The temperature had been climbing steadily for the past hour. Sweat dripped down my back. My laptop screen was the only light at my desk besides those flickering emergency bulbs overhead. And then, in the chaos and shimmering light, he looked directly at me when he said, "Some people here should be grateful I even let them have a job." I felt my face burn with humiliation and rage combined. That was the moment everything in my life began to change. And the moment that would eventually send an incident report with his signature straight to the board. My name is Miley Rhodes, and this is how the Blackout turned into his downfall. 2 hours earlier, at exactly 7:15 p.m., I had received an email with the subject line, "Performance review required, urgent." Inside, Lawrence had written just one sentence. "Your performance has been underwhelming lately. We need to discuss your future here." Translation: "We're setting you up to fire you." I stayed during the blackout because I needed my job desperately. I needed the health insurance to cover my mother's medical bills after her stroke. I needed the paycheck to keep our apartment. I needed the stability while everything else in my life felt like it was crumbling. And Lawrence Porch knew all of this. He smirked as he passed my workstation, watching me type in the near darkness with only my laptop screen providing any light at all. "See? Miley knows how to sacrifice for the team." The humiliation was slow burning, like a fuse steadily approaching dynamite. I had worked at Vertex Solutions for 3 long years. I had never missed a single deadline, never caused problems or complaints, never pushed back when Lawrence changed project requirements at the last minute or demanded weekend work without any notice or compensation. But lately he had been targeting me specifically. Small criticisms in meetings, pointed questions about my commitment level, suggestions that maybe I wasn't the right fit anymore for the company culture. When the smoke alarm finally triggered at around 10:30 p.m., Lawrence announced over the piercing noise, "If anything gets mishandled tonight, I'll know exactly who's responsible for the mistakes." His eyes rested directly on me as he said it. My stomach dropped like a stone. He wasn't just forcing unpaid overtime during a dangerous situation. He was deliberately lining me up as the fall person for whatever went wrong. I knew it with absolute certainty. Everyone around me knew it too. But no one dared speak up or challenge him. Not then, at least. The temperature inside the building kept rising steadily. The backup generator was supposed to kick in automatically within minutes of a power failure, but something had clearly gone wrong with the system. The air conditioning had died completely, and the server room down the hall was overheating according to the digital displays. Our IT specialist, Marcus, kept checking his phone nervously, his face illuminated by the blue screen glow. "The monitoring system's showing critical temperature warnings," he muttered quietly to me. "We should evacuate immediately. Company policy requires it." But Lawrence stood by those doors like an unmovable guard, his arms crossed over his chest. His expression was cold, calculating, completely unconcerned about our safety or well-being. He wasn't going to let anyone leave until the project work was completed to his satisfaction, even if it literally killed us in the process. Around 11:43 p.m., a worker from facilities burst through the stairwell door, shouting desperately over the alarms. "Everyone needs to evacuate now. The backup generator is critically overheating. This building isn't safe." People panicked immediately. Chairs scraped loudly against floors. Someone knocked over a coffee cup that shattered. Papers scattered everywhere as people grabbed their belongings. Lawrence raised both hands high. "Everyone sit down immediately." But the heat was unbearable now, suffocating and dangerous. Sweat dripped down my face constantly. My shirt clung uncomfortably to my back. The air felt thick, hard to breathe, like trying to inhale soup. And then someone collapsed. A woman named Cassidy from accounting suddenly fell near her desk, hitting the floor hard. People rushed over to help her, fanning her overheated face frantically with folders and papers. I grabbed my bag quickly and moved toward the emergency stairs, my heart pounding. Lawrence blocked my path again, stepping directly in front of me. "If you step outside this building tonight, don't bother coming back Monday morning." His breath smelled distinctly like overpriced whiskey and pure arrogance combined. My voice finally snapped after hours of silent compliance. "You're putting lives at serious risk." "And?" he said flatly, without any trace of concern or humanity. That was it, the exact moment of the incident. The safety officer from facilities, a capable man named Orlando, stood directly behind Lawrence with his work tablet raised and recording everything that was happening. I didn't know the safety officer had been recording the entire confrontation on his tablet. I didn't know I'd inadvertently triggered a mandatory corporate investigation by challenging Lawrence publicly. I only knew I grabbed something as I escaped. A blank incident report template from the emergency station mounted on the wall near the exits. Pure instinct drove me, or maybe desperate hope. I shoved it quickly into my jacket pocket and escaped into the cool night air as the building behind me shrieked with overlapping alarms and emergency vehicle sirens approaching. My hands shook uncontrollably. My lungs burned from the overheated air. I genuinely thought I was finally safe from immediate danger. I had absolutely no idea the real danger was still approaching fast. Outside on the sidewalk, paramedics were already arriving in ambulances to check on Cassidy and others affected by the heat. Fire trucks lined the entire street, their lights flashing red and white. The building looked like a complete disaster scene, with emergency vehicles everywhere and personnel rushing around purposefully. I stood there catching my breath, watching as Lawrence stormed out after most employees, his face twisted with rage. He didn't approach me directly or say anything, but he stared at me with such intense hatred that I felt it physically. And I knew with absolute certainty that Monday morning would be complete hell for me. I walked slowly to my car, clutching that blank form in my pocket like a fragile lifeline I didn't fully understand yet. Monday morning arrived with dread pooling in my stomach. Lawrence summoned me into his private office before I even sat down at my desk to start work. "Miley, your behavior during Friday's blackout was extremely disappointing and unprofessional." "I was trying not to die from heat exposure," I replied as calmly as possible. "You were deliberately insubordinate," he corrected sharply, his voice like ice cutting through the air. Then he slid a paper across his polished mahogany desk toward me. A formal written warning on company letterhead. But the signature block already had a name typed neatly under it in advance. "You'll sign this right now," he said firmly, "or we'll consider your refusal as voluntary resignation effective immediately." My throat tightened painfully. I desperately needed this job. I needed to eat regular meals. I needed to pay rent on my apartment. I needed to cover my mother's mounting medical expenses. But signing this document meant admitting fault for something I didn't do wrong. And that documented fault could be used to fire me later with cause. Meaning no severance package, no unemployment benefits, absolutely nothing to fall back on. My hand hovered uncertainly over the expensive pen he offered across the desk. I could feel his eyes boring into me, waiting eagerly for me to break under the mounting pressure like he clearly assumed I would. But then something unexpected happened that changed everything. Lawrence's phone buzzed loudly and insistently on his desk. He glanced down at it, frowned deeply, then stepped outside to answer it privately. The moment Lawrence left his office, I noticed something that made my blood run completely cold. The date printed on the warning form. Dated Thursday, November 16th. The blackout incident had happened Friday night, November 17th. Meaning he had planned and prepared this write-up in advance, before the incident even occurred. He didn't just want my obedience and silence. He wanted documented ammunition to destroy my career. To replace me with someone more compliant. To ruin my professional reputation permanently. To silence me before I could speak publicly about what happened during that dangerous blackout situation. My fear suddenly hardened into something cold, sharp, and focused. I stood up quietly and took a quick photo of the document with my phone, making sure to capture the date clearly before he could return and force me to sign. Then I sat back down carefully, leaving the pen completely untouched on his desk. When Lawrence came back minutes later, his expression was visibly irritated and impatient. That was HR calling, he said curtly. Now sign the form immediately. I'd like to review it carefully with a lawyer first, I said as calmly as I could manage. His face darkened considerably, turning an unhealthy shade of red. You have until end of business day today. I nodded silently and left his office, the unsigned warning still sitting on his desk exactly where he'd placed it. I knew I had just made a powerful enemy who controlled my employment future. But I also knew I now had concrete evidence in my phone. Evidence proving he had planned this retaliation before the blackout ever happened. I brought my serious concerns to HR immediately that same morning. But the HR director, Marlene Costas, didn't even attempt to hide her condescending smirk when I walked nervously into her organized office. Lawrence assures us you're greatly exaggerating the situation, she said before I could even finish explaining everything that happened. He nearly trapped us inside during a mandatory safety evacuation, I insisted firmly. That's not what he reported to us. He already reported something to you? She slid a clean, official-looking one-page summary across the polished table toward me. No employee signatures anywhere. No official timestamps. No actual truth. That's a summary of Friday's incident, she said coolly. Written by Lawrence himself this morning. It clearly states that employees voluntarily chose to stay to meet critical project deadlines. I stared at the paper in complete disbelief. That's an absolute lie. Marlene leaned back comfortably in her leather chair, studying me like I was a problematic child. Do you have any proof otherwise? I thought immediately of the blank incident report currently hidden in my bag. But I said absolutely nothing about it. A simple summary was legally worthless in any formal investigation or proceedings. And I knew Lawrence would never willingly sign anything that directly implicated him in wrongdoing. Unless someone somehow tricked him into doing exactly that. The idea formed slowly in my mind as I left her dismissive office. Dangerous and risky, but entirely possible if I was careful. While cleaning out my cluttered desk drawer late that afternoon, I found the blank incident report template from the night of the blackout. I turned it over carefully in my hands, studying every detail and small print instruction. Corporate forms at Vertex were automatically coded with digital metadata for tracking purposes. Every form had a unique identifier and timestamp protocol built into the system. If one got filled out with correct information and properly submitted, it became legally logged in the corporate compliance system automatically. I didn't want personal revenge against Lawrence. I wanted protection for myself and others. But sometimes the only way to genuinely protect yourself is to let the documented truth speak louder than convenient lies. I opened my laptop and carefully researched our company's official incident reporting protocols and requirements. Any safety-related incident required proper documentation within 72 hours of occurrence. The form had to be signed by the most senior person present during the incident. That was Lawrence Porch. And once signed and scanned into the system, it automatically routed directly to the board's compliance inbox with a priority flag. No one could stop it after that point. Not HR or their lawyers. Not Lawrence or his supporters. Not even the board could delete it once it entered the protected system. My hands trembled slightly as I realized what I could potentially do. But I needed his signature on the document. And Lawrence would never knowingly sign something that incriminated him. Unless he didn't realize what he was actually signing. I waited patiently until Lawrence called another emergency meeting Tuesday afternoon. His ego absolutely loved those public displays. After he left his office door standing wide open, exactly as he always did when he planned to publicly berate someone, I slipped inside quietly. I didn't take anything from his office. I didn't move anything around. I simply placed the blank incident report directly on his leather chair, clipped professionally to a manila folder, with a small sticky note attached on top. Per your request, here's the write-up from Friday. Please sign and return to HR by end of day. He would automatically assume HR left it there for him. He always assumed HR was dutifully cleaning up after him, covering his tracks, making his messes disappear without questions. And when angry or rushed, Lawrence signed absolutely anything shoved under his nose. Anything at all. I had personally watched him do it dozens of times over 3 years, scribbling his signature carelessly on expense reports, timesheets, project approvals without actually reading them thoroughly. His arrogance made him dangerously careless. and I was counting entirely on that character flaw. I left his office quietly and returned to my desk, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone nearby could hear it clearly. I pretended to work normally. Pretended everything was completely normal. Pretended I wasn't about to gamble my entire future on one desperate, calculated move. I kept my eyes on my computer screen, but my attention stayed focused on Lawrence's office down the hall. Waiting. Later that afternoon around 3:30, Lawrence stormed out of his office suddenly, slamming his door so hard the glass panels rattled loudly in their frames. "Everyone wants endless paperwork? Fine," he shouted to no one in particular, his face red with anger. Then he scribbled his signature aggressively on a document in front of half the office and shoved it forcefully into Marlene's hands as she happened to walk past his doorway. She looked startled and confused but said nothing in response. He walked away quickly, muttering angrily about bureaucracy and incompetence and ungrateful employees. My heart hammered violently in my chest. Because right there, sitting in Marlene's uncertain grip, was the one thing absolutely no one expected. A legally time-stamped incident report with the CEO's signature. And every damaging detail he didn't realize he'd just officially validated. The form documented everything. The blocked exits, the ignored safety alarm, the overheating generator, the collapsed employee, his direct refusal to evacuate, his explicit threat to fire anyone who left. All of it in official language. With his signature and date in his own handwriting at the bottom. Marlene glanced down at the paper in her hands, her expression shifting rapidly from confusion to alarm to something like panic. She looked up, scanning the office as if desperately trying to figure out where this form had come from. Her eyes landed on me for just one brief second. I looked away immediately, focusing intently on my computer screen like nothing unusual was happening. My hand stayed steady on my keyboard. That night, I deliberately stayed late at the office after most people left. Not to work on projects. To retrieve one specific thing. Every signed form at Vertex went through a specific mandatory process. HR scanned them into the digital system immediately, then filed the physical originals in a locked cabinet overnight. But the scans happened right away. And there was always a copy left temporarily in the output tray of the scanning machine, just for a few hours before being shredded for security. I waited until Marlene finally left for the day around 6:45. Then I walked calmly into the HR scanning room, unlocked as always for employee access, and checked the output tray carefully. There it was, exactly as I expected. My copy of the signed incident report. Not the original document. Just the scanned duplicate that would have been destroyed anyway by morning. No theft of company property. No lies about what happened. Just truth documented in ink. Just evidence of exactly what occurred. Just a CEO's arrogance captured permanently in his own handwriting. I folded it carefully and placed it securely in my bag. My hands didn't shake this time. I felt strangely calm. Focused and clear. Ready for whatever came next. Because I knew what happened next would be completely out of my control now. The system had already automatically logged the report. It had already been sent to the board's compliance inbox with a priority safety flag. And there was absolutely nothing anyone could do to stop what was coming. The next morning, Wednesday, Lawrence summoned me into the glass conference room. People watched with obvious pity as I walked in, clearly assuming I was being fired. He closed the door behind me deliberately. "So HR gave you that warning Monday," he began, leaning casually against the table. "They tried to," I replied. He leaned forward, smiling in that smug, self-satisfied way he had perfected over the years. "Well, we've decided your position may no longer be necessary here. Budget cuts, you understand. Nothing personal." My ears buzzed with white noise. My chest tightened painfully. He was firing me right now. After endangering everyone's safety. After lying to HR and the company. After planning my termination before the blackout even happened. But he didn't know what I had in my bag. His own words, his own signature, his own complete downfall neatly folded in a manila envelope. I asked a single, simple question. "Before you finalize anything official, can you check something for me?" He looked amused, like I was a child asking for one last meaningless favor before punishment. "What is it now, Miley?" "It's about Friday night." His jaw tightened slightly, but his arrogance pushed him to stay and listen. He thought he was completely untouchable. He thought no one could successfully challenge his authority. He thought I was fundamentally weak. That mistaken belief would destroy him completely. I laid the photocopied document on the conference table between us. His face drained of all color instantly. Where did you get this? He demanded, snatching it up quickly. You gave it to HR yesterday, I said calmly. That was completely true. And he knew it. He scanned the text quickly, his eyes moving faster as he read further down the page. I watched the exact moment he realized what he'd signed. The incident report contained everything. The blocked exits, the deliberate refusal to evacuate during a safety emergency, the direct threats to terminate employees who left, the medical emergency that resulted from his decision. And at the bottom, in his own unmistakable handwriting, his signature and yesterday's date. You didn't. His voice cracked audibly. I didn't do anything, I said quietly. You signed it yourself. His hands began to shake visibly as he held the paper. This was supposed to be just a summary. HR told me it was just an internal summary for their files. HR doesn't handle incident reports, I replied. Safety does. And safety reports go directly to the board once they're signed by senior management. The realization hit him like a physical truck. His face went from pale to deep red in seconds. You deliberately set me up. No, I said quietly. I just gave you exactly what you asked for. Paperwork. He stared at me, his expression cycling through shock, rage, and something approaching fear. The board already has this? I nodded once. Automatically. It was scanned into the system yesterday afternoon. He stood up abruptly, nearly knocking his chair over. This conversation is over. The next morning, Thursday, HR was in complete meltdown mode. Marlene approached my desk quietly, her usual confidence and superiority completely gone. Miley, would you like to formally withdraw your complaint? She asked in a desperate whisper. I never filed a complaint, I replied honestly. She paled visibly. That makes it significantly worse, she whispered, glancing around nervously. Worse for them, not for me. The incident report was triggered automatically once scanned into the system. And once scanned, it logged directly to the board's compliance inbox with a priority flag for safety violations. Meaning it was already completely out of her hands. Out of mine. Out of Lawrence's control. In the board's exclusive possession. And completely irreversible by anyone. No one could delete it from the system. No one could edit it afterward. No one could make it disappear. Corporate policy required the board to investigate any incident report involving executive leadership within 48 hours. Marlene knew this policy. Lawrence knew this policy. And now they both knew they were trapped by the very system they had used to trap others. Is there anything else you need? I asked politely. Marlene shook her head quickly and walked away, practically running. I returned to my work, calm and steady. I answered emails. I updated project files. I attended scheduled meetings. Like everything was completely normal. Because for me it finally was. 2 days later, Friday morning, Lawrence didn't show up for work. Whispers spread like wildfire through the office. Did you hear? The board called an emergency meeting yesterday. Lawrence got summoned Thursday afternoon with his lawyer. I heard they're doing a full investigation into multiple incidents. Executives went completely silent. HR avoided eye contact with everyone. The office felt like a ship waiting to hear if the captain had hit an iceberg. Kept my head down. Calm. Quiet. Exactly what no one expected from me. People assumed I'd be gloating or celebrating publicly. But I wasn't doing either. I was just tired. Tired of constantly fighting. Tired of being afraid every day. Tired of wondering if I'd have a job tomorrow. Marcus from IT stopped by my desk during lunch. I heard what you did, he said quietly. I looked up, genuinely unsure how to respond. Thank you, he continued. A lot of us were too scared to say anything about Friday night. But you weren't. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He walked away and I realized something important. I hadn't been alone in this. Others had seen what happened. Others had been afraid too. And now, maybe things would finally change. The truth was finally louder than fear. Just when I thought the story was ending, something unexpected happened Friday afternoon. A facilities worker named Claudia approached me in the parking garage after work. She looked nervous, glancing around before speaking. I saw what he did that night, she said quickly. And I filed my own report. You weren't the only one. My breath caught in my throat. You filed a report too? She nodded quickly. I'm the safety officer's assistant. Orlando made me document everything I saw. The blocked exits, the threats, all of it. He submitted it to the board the same night it happened. I felt the ground shift under my feet. I hadn't been alone at all. The board had multiple accounts now. Independent witnesses. Different reports filed separately. All saying the same thing. We've been scared to say anything for months, Claudia continued, her voice shaking. Lawrence has been doing things like this for years. Forcing unpaid overtime. Threatening people. Ignoring safety protocols. But no one ever had proof before that would stick. The truth was unfolding faster than I had anticipated. And it was too late for anyone to stop it. Lawrence's carefully constructed image was crumbling rapidly. And there was nothing he could do to hold it together. The lies were collapsing under the weight of documented truth. Multiple witnesses. Multiple reports. Multiple violations. All pointing at Lawrence. A week later, an external corporate auditor showed up unannounced Monday morning. Not for me. For Lawrence. People were pulled into private conference rooms one by one throughout the day. Being asked questions. Hard, specific questions about working conditions, safety protocols, overtime policies, and management behavior patterns. Someone whispered near the coffee machine, "They're investigating misuse of authority." Another person added quietly, "and mishandling of safety protocols." Someone said they're looking at patterns going back at least 2 years. Everything Lawrence thought he could bury was resurfacing, sharpening, pointing straight at him like arrows. I was called in for my interview Wednesday afternoon. The auditor, a woman named Patricia Vance, was professional but thorough. She asked me detailed questions about Friday night. About the warning Lawrence tried to make me sign. About the predated document. About his pattern of behavior over the years. I answered every question honestly, providing dates and details when I could remember them clearly. "Did anyone else witness these events?" she asked. "Yes. Marcus and I. Cassidy from accounting. Claudia from facilities. Orlando the safety officer. At least 20 other people." She made notes carefully. "Thank you, Miley. You've been very helpful." As I left, I felt something shift. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about everyone Lawrence had hurt. And justice was finally coming. The COO, a woman named Victoria Brennan, was overheard in the hallway Thursday having a heated phone conversation. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but her voice carried clearly. "He forged reports before this. This time he signed the wrong one and couldn't take it back." I froze at my desk. Forged reports? Pearl, this was bigger than me. Bigger than the blackout. Bigger than one single incident. Lawrence had apparently been falsifying documents for years. Covering up safety violations, manipulating performance reviews, creating fraudulent justifications for terminations of employees he simply didn't like. And now the board was digging deeper into all of it systematically. His former allies had begun jumping ship quickly. Victoria, who had always supported Lawrence publicly, was now distancing herself as fast as possible. His downfall wasn't just coming anymore. It was accelerating rapidly. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. The careful lies he'd built over years were collapsing like a house of cards. Each investigation revealed another problem. Each interview exposed another violation. Each document showed another instance of misconduct. The truth was finally louder than his power. His authority was crumbling. His reputation was destroyed. His career was ending. And it was all his own fault. I didn't attend the board hearing the following Monday. They didn't ask me to. They didn't need me there. They had everything they needed already. His signature on the incident report. The timestamp proving the unsafe conditions. The safety recordings from Orlando's tablet. The facility's witness testimony from Claudia. The forged performance warnings I'd photographed. HR's involvement in covering up previous complaints. And a documented pattern of past misconduct stretching back years. Multiple employees had come forward once they knew it was safe. People who had been bullied, threatened, or pushed out by Lawrence over the years. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. I was at my desk answering emails and trying to focus on actual work, when Marcus walked over Tuesday afternoon. "They're letting him go," he whispered. But something in his tone suggested there was more to the story. Just letting him go? I asked. He shook his head slightly. Wait for the memo. I felt my stomach tighten with anticipation. This wasn't over yet. There was one more twist coming. And I had a feeling it would be the biggest one of all. The final piece. The ultimate consequence. The ending Lawrence never saw coming. Because arrogance always blinds you to your own downfall. The internal memo hit everyone's email at exactly 3:14 p.m. Tuesday afternoon. Effective immediately, Lawrence Porch has been terminated for cause following a comprehensive board investigation into multiple policy violations and safety infractions. Terminated for cause. Those 3 words changed everything completely, meaning no severance package, no performance bonus, no pension benefits, no confidentiality agreement to protect his reputation, no golden parachute, nothing at all. His arrogance had ensured the board had enough documented evidence to cut him loose without paying him a single cent beyond his final paycheck. The office fell strangely quiet after the announcement. People read the memo in silence. Some looked relieved. Others looked shocked that it had actually happened. A few looked scared as if they worried they might be next somehow. But mostly people just looked tired. Tired from months or years of working under someone who treated them as disposable. Justice has a sound, I realized. Sometimes it's not cheering or celebration. Sometimes it's just silence. The peaceful, relieved silence of people who can finally breathe again. I closed my laptop and sat back in my chair. It was finally over. The nightmare had ended. Lawrence was gone. And I was still here. Still standing. Still employed. Still breathing freely. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely safe. HR approached me again the following Monday morning. This time, Marlene wasn't smirking or condescending. She looked uncomfortable and almost apologetic. Miley, the board would like to offer you a formal apology for how this situation was handled initially, she began carefully. I waited, saying nothing. We also want to discuss your future with the company. We'd like to promote you to project lead for the client services division. A fair promotion. One I had deserved for over a year but had been blocked from receiving because Lawrence saw me as a threat. With a substantial salary increase and full benefits review, she added. I considered the offer carefully. Part of me wanted to walk away from Vertex entirely. But another part of me realized that leaving would feel like letting Lawrence win even from a distance. I accept, I said finally. On one condition. Marlene looked nervous. What condition? That safety protocols are enforced consistently. No exceptions. No executive overrides. If there's an evacuation order, everyone leaves. Including management. She nodded quickly. Absolutely. That's already being implemented company-wide. I accepted the promotion. Not out of spite. Not for revenge. But because I had earned it. And because my survival didn't depend on fear anymore. My voice mattered now. My work was valued. My safety was protected. Everything had changed. With Lawrence gone, the company transformed in ways I hadn't expected. Overtime became optional again, properly compensated. Safety protocols were actually enforced consistently. People were treated like human beings instead of productivity metrics. HR hired additional staff and implemented anonymous reporting systems. Management training was mandated for all executives. The toxic culture that had festered under Lawrence's leadership began to fade. People smiled more at work. Collaboration increased naturally. Morale improved dramatically within just a few weeks. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't dread walking into the building each morning. I learned something powerful during those months of transformation. Sometimes survival itself is the first victory. Sometimes staying calm is the sharpest weapon you have. Sometimes truth is enough even when it feels like you're powerless. I had been terrified that night during the blackout. Terrified of losing my job. Terrified of being blamed for something that wasn't my fault. Terrified that no one would believe me. But I had kept the blank form. I had documented the truth. I had trusted the process. And in the end that had been enough. The system worked when given truth. Justice came when evidence was provided. Change happened when silence was broken. And I had done all 3. Months later, I watched from my new corner office as movers emptied out Lawrence's reserved parking spot, removing the sign with his name. He never contacted me after his termination. He never tried to apologize or explain. He never got the chance. I heard through former colleagues that he had difficulty finding new executive positions. The termination for cause followed him everywhere. References were checked. Background investigations revealed the pattern of misconduct. Companies weren't interested in hiring someone with that kind of liability and reputation. I didn't destroy Lawrence Porch. He destroyed himself with the signature he scribbled in arrogance, assuming no one would ever dare challenge him. My only job was letting him hand me the match. I lit nothing myself. He burned his own empire down with his carelessness and contempt. And I walked away from the ashes without looking back. I had a team to lead now. Projects to manage successfully. People to mentor and support. A career to build on my own terms without fear. The blank incident report that I had grabbed that night had been my lifeline. But the real power hadn't come from the paper itself. It had come from the choice I made to use it. To speak up. To document truth. To refuse silence. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't fire or fury. It's thriving exactly where someone tried to break you. It's succeeding on your own terms after someone told you that you weren't good enough. It's proving that their cruelty was never about your worth. It was always about their insecurity. Lawrence had tried to make me the scapegoat for his failures. He had tried to silence me with threats and intimidation. He had tried to erase me before I could speak the truth.